Look at your bank account right now. The number hasn't changed. But if you live in Sri Lanka, you're waiting in line for fuel that might not come. If you're in Queensland, you're paying $200 for a tank of diesel. And if you're in Dublin, you're blockading ports just to survive. This isn't a history lesson. This is happening right now. The price of oil has jumped from $70 a barrel to nearly $140. But those numbers are cold. The real story is hotter than that. Inflation is usually presented as an unfortunate side effect of a growing economy. But this time it's different. This time it's a weapon. And oil is the trigger. This is Crash Historian, where history uncovers the hidden forces shaping money, power, and the modern world. If you enjoy documentaries that uncover the hidden mechanics behind economics and history, consider subscribing. And let me know what city you're watching from. I'm always curious to see how far these stories travel. Here's the full story they don't teach you in school. So what actually happened? In early 2026, the United States and Israel launched a military campaign targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran retaliated in the only way that mattered to the global economy. They closed the Strait of Hormuz. That narrow waterway between the Persian Gulf and the open ocean is the most important choke point in the global energy system. Roughly 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas flows through it. 20%. And just like that, it was gone. Iran didn't stop there. They attacked Qatar's liquefied natural gas facilities. They struck Saudi Arabia's largest oil processing plant. The entire region was in flames. The global energy map was rewritten. Not gradually, not predictably, instantly. Oil prices that had been hovering around $70 a barrel spiked to nearly $140. In a matter of weeks, the cost of filling a tank of diesel in Australia went from around $180 to nearly $350. Diesel, not petrol, diesel. And that matters, because diesel moves the world. It moves trucks. It moves ships. It moves trains. It moves the machinery that grows our food and the equipment that builds our cities. When diesel doubles in price, everything doubles in price. The head of the International Energy Agency called this much bigger than the 1970s and much bigger than the Russian gas shock. He wasn't being dramatic. He was being accurate. In 1973, the oil shock cut global supply by 5 to 7%. Today, we're looking at a disruption of more than 14 million barrels per day, around 20%. That's the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. A temporary ceasefire was declared in April. A 14-point memorandum followed in June. Markets briefly stabilized. The world breathed a sigh of relief. But the peace was fragile. By July, hostilities had resumed. Iran attacked commercial vessels in the strait. The Strait of Hormuz was closed again. The ceasefire was declared over. Oil markets are once again in turmoil, and the world is running out of buffer. The impact on global oil markets has been devastating. Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has collapsed. Before the war, about 130 vessels crossed the strait each day. Now, it's as low as 14 crossings in a single day. Strategic petroleum reserves are being depleted at an alarming rate. Global oil inventories fell by 360 million barrels between March and May. The buffer that was supposed to protect the world from supply shocks is almost gone. The International Energy Agency now expects global oil demand to contract for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic. Global oil supply is on track to decline by 3.7 million barrels per day in 2026. The surplus that analysts had predicted is in jeopardy. And here's what nobody's telling you. To understand where we're going, we have to understand where we've been. The pattern started in 1973. Egypt and Syria attacked Israel on Yom Kippur. The Arab oil embargo followed. Oil prices quadrupled. Stagflation hit. The post-war economic miracle died. Governments fell. The lesson was clear. The world was vulnerable to oil. Then came 1979, the Iranian Revolution. Oil production collapsed by 7%. Panic buying doubled the shortage. Oil prices hit $34 a barrel. The second shock in 6 years. The vulnerability wasn't temporary. It was structural. In 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. The UN embargo cut 4.3 million barrels a day from the market. Oil doubled, but the crisis was resolved quickly. The wrong lesson was learned. We can handle this. The truth was different. They got lucky. In 2008, oil hit $147 a barrel, the highest in history. But this was different. Rising demand from China and India. Speculation. Hurricanes. The financial crisis crashed oil to under $40. The lesson became even more dangerous. Oil crises are temporary. They're not. Then came 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. Oil hits $139. Europe panics. The real shock is still to come. And now, 2026. Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of global supply is disrupted. The real shock has arrived. Now let's talk about the human cost. Because behind every oil price is a person struggling to survive. 80% of the oil that flows through the Strait of Hormuz goes to Asian markets. Vietnam imports 95% of its crude oil from the Persian Gulf. The government is burning through billions in fuel tax exemptions just to keep the economy from grinding to a halt. The Philippines declared a state of energy emergency. Trixie L is a fisherwoman there. Every day, her husband goes out to sea, and every day, the catch is getting smaller. Not because the fish are disappearing, because diesel is too expensive. The boat stays in port. It is disappointing and angering, she says. They continue to make huge profits while ordinary people are struggling. In Bangladesh, farmers can't secure diesel for irrigation during the paddy season. If the rice doesn't get planted, millions of people go hungry. In Sri Lanka, ride-hailing drivers are struggling. Keelam Dissanayaka is skipping lease payments on his tuk-tuk because fuel costs more than he earns. In Ireland, truckers blockaded fuel depots for days. They're not protesting. They're fighting for survival. In Africa, the World Bank projects that millions more people will face acute hunger because of higher oil prices. Fertilizer is made from natural gas. When oil goes up, fertilizer goes up. When fertilizer goes up, food goes up. And when food goes up, people starve. The economic impact hasn't hit fully yet. Qatar's finance minister put it plainly. A full-fledged impact is coming, and it is not far away. The crisis that started in the Persian Gulf is just a wave. The tsunami hasn't hit yet. So are we better prepared than the 1970s? The global economy is 70% less oil-intensive than it was. OPEC's market power is more limited. Energy alternatives exist. Central banks are more independent. But here's the problem. Oil still matters. The price of every good you consume depends on the cost of transporting it. Higher oil prices mean higher food prices, higher clothing prices, higher everything prices. Our global supply chains are more fragile than ever. Each step depends on oil. Each step is vulnerable to disruption. One expert put it this way. Reserves and efficiency offer some buffer which the episodes in the 1970s lacked, but the raw scale of lost supply makes this nastier. The buffer is bigger, but the shock is bigger too. There's a pattern in history that's written in oil, and it keeps repeating because the world keeps making the same mistake. It started in 1973, the Yom Kippur War, the Arab oil embargo. Oil prices quadrupled. Stagflation hit. Governments fell. The lesson was clear. The world was vulnerable. Then came 1979, the Iranian Revolution. Oil production collapsed. Panic buying doubled the shortage. The second shock in 6 years. The vulnerability wasn't temporary. It was structural. In 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. The UN embargo cut 4.3 million barrels a day from the market. Oil doubled. But the crisis was resolved quickly. And the wrong lesson was learned. Governments told themselves, we can handle this. The truth was different. They got lucky. In 2008, oil hit $147 a barrel, the highest in history. The financial crisis crashed it to under $40. And the lesson became even more dangerous. Oil crises are temporary. They sort themselves out. They don't always. Then came 2022. Russia invaded Ukraine. Oil hit $139. Europe panicked. The real shock was still to come. And now, 2026. Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of global supply is disrupted. The real shock has arrived. Each time, the same story. The world is addicted to oil. The governments that control it use it as a weapon. And the people who suffer are the ones who can least afford it. The reality is, one expert said, that major conflicts are likely to erupt before any of these players actually runs out of oil. We won't run out of oil. We'll run out of political stability. The oil will still be there. But the governments that control it will be at war. And that's a problem no new well, no new pipeline, no new war is going to solve. From Peter Kinson in Queensland, paying $200 for a tank of diesel, to Trixie L in the Philippines, wondering if her family will eat tonight, to the millions waiting in line for fuel in Sri Lanka. The human cost is already enormous. This didn't happen in 1973 because of the Yom Kippur War. It happened because the world was addicted to oil. It didn't happen in 1979 because of the Iranian Revolution. It happened because the addiction was still there. And it's not happening in 2026 because of the Iran war. It's happening because the addiction is still there. The only real solution, the only thing that actually changes this pattern, is to stop being dependent on oil. This is Crash Historian. Every week, we uncover the hidden forces shaping money, power, and the modern world. If you want to understand the real story behind the headlines, consider subscribing. Because the more you know about the past, the better you can protect your future. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and never forget, history doesn't just repeat, it teaches.